put it in the calling card section, so it's international. So I'm from New Zealand, but I live in New York now, and that Spanish-speaking film is about how my wife and I got married. So I mean, yeah, it's pretty much. I mean, it's weird how film changes your memories, but that is how I remember things happening. We got married about 9 years ago and moved to the States we were basically told by the green card U.S. consular officer that we had to get married in 3 weeks and we'd only be going out for 6 months, which was very awkward. And then I was living in New York, I mean, I still do, and last year I kind of had this sort of moment of crisis where I said I need to make a film about something, and I wrote like 5 different scripts, and whenever I showed it to people, this was the one that people responded to the most. And when I was kind of, to answer your question about being Spanish, when I was trying to think about like how would I do this film in New York to get New Zealand actors and try to make it work in New York.
Not a big Kiwi community in New York.
No, not a huge Kiwi community. And I thought, well, what I have access to is a lot of Spanish-speaking actors. And then when I wrote the script as well, it kind of felt, like I'm a big fan of Pedro Almodovar. I think I'm riffing kind of a lot on You Tu Mama Tambien. So I just kind of went with it and said, well, it's a Spanish-speaking film now, and that's what we're going to do. And I don't speak Spanish. So that was interesting.
Is there someone who's going to ask a question? Okay.
I think there's someone.
How did you do the casting then? How did you go about finding the 2 people?
Well, we cast in Spanish, which was weird. So I had one producer who did speak Spanish, and so there's an interesting thing which is, and I don't know if there's any filmmakers here, but because I have directed stuff in other languages before, and I speak a little bit of French, a little bit of Japanese, and I love languages. Though I have no experience with Spanish at all, and but there's an interesting thing, which is if you're directing in another language, it's actually kind of liberating because you don't actually. I mean, I don't care what they're saying, as long as it feels right, And so in the casting sessions, it was, there's a really interesting thing, which is that we decided that the film was set in the Dominican Republic, and DR Spanish is very different from Puerto Rican Spanish, it's very different from Spanish Spanish, and so there's an interesting thing about those 2 actors, which is one is Puerto Rican, Ismael is Puerto Rican, but he knows dialects very well, and he knows the DR dialect, but Inez is Swedish and Spanish, so she has very, a very different accent. And so when we showed Dominican people the film, they always comment about that it's a kind of interesting dynamic because she's clearly not from the Dominican Republic. So I think that kind of adds to the film because they're from 2 different worlds. But it, there's just an interesting dynamic to like working in another language because it's not just Spanish, it's Dominican Spanish, and there's all these sort of nuances to it. There's one line that he says that every Dominican person we show to says, that's a Dominican there, all he's saying is, I think he just grunts in one line. He goes, who? And they're like, that's totally Dominican. Okay.
Well, I mean, there's a long history of that, and particularly here in America with the folks who came over, the German immigrants who came over before World War II. A lot of them were working in a studio system and didn't speak really English at all. So they were like, I was talking with a colleague of mine yesterday. We were talking about how Renoir. It was actually when he was doing his Hollywood films, he would sit down and he would just kind of go through the motions and say, "This is what I want you to basically act out the scene for the people," and then they would do what he did with the English dialogue, and then he would just film it. Yeah, and that's how he would tell.
Or Hitchcock's first sound film. The actress was, I think she was French, and she couldn't speak, and so they had to redub her, and it was a really interesting process about the way languages are translated as well.
Yeah. Well, speaking of translation, how did you, once you had the script, who translated it into Spanish for you, and did you have anyone on set doing kind of a Spanish language kind of direction, or like just saying, telling you like, oh yeah, I think they got it, or, you know.
Well, so we had a producer who speaks Spanish as well, and he did a lot of the translation. So he's not much of a writer. So then we would take it to a friend of ours is a lawyer, and maybe trying to get everything correct, and she would kind of try to get the dialects correct as well. But then it was a lot of the actors themselves. We would just kind of work with the actors, and they would self-correct things and figure things out.
Make it sound a little bit more natural.
Yeah, but I mean, and I was able to interject because like the more we did it, the more I would kind of like figure out what they were saying and what words were what, and how things were being said. So it was a process.
Okay. We have time for like one or two more questions. So if anyone else out there has burning desire to ask something.